We are live.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Founder Hacks, our podcast where we share something we've seen, something we've read, and something we've learned. It's been a source of inspiration or edification to the founders that we work with. Let me start by saying an enormously warm welcome to Mr. Alex Moore.
Hello, Ben.
Hello, Alex. And an equally fuzzy hello to Mr. Anthony Enright.
Oh, fuzzy hello.
A fuzzy hello.
The man in
Why
the
not?
suit. The man in the suit as well.
He gets
The man who gets dressed up for our podcast.
Well, I'd like
For
to
the
make an
benefit of our
effort.
listeners, Anthony is wearing a suit today. I think the first person I've seen in a suit for many months, but he looks very dapper. So all is well.
Well, in fairness, all you can see is the top half.
Oh dear.
Very good, Mr. Enright. Very good. So today's founder hacks are on the theme of thinking. How we think, how we generate good quality thinking, how we facilitate that to happen in our businesses. So today we've got a seen, a read, and a learned on the theme of our thinking. And I believe, chaps, it's me to kick us off. So with your permission, I'll share what I've seen in this space. So it was interesting, actually. It was a meeting that I was involved in. And it was a meeting where we were thinking together. A group of us were thinking together and trying to solve quite a complex, or come to a fairly complex conclusion. And what was interesting is that at one stage, I can't remember who actually said it, but someone said, look, can we skip to the end here? Let me just skip to the end. Why don't everyone just say what they think the conclusion is? And lo and behold, everyone had reached the same conclusion. Yeah, so we'd set aside all this time to do this analysis and to kind of work through what we all had thought would be a very complex and difficult thinking process. But actually, just by someone asking the question, if we skip to the end and if we all just pretended for a second we'd done this, what do you think you'd be saying at the end? And everyone said the same bloody thing. And I thought, wow, that was really interesting. I mean, obviously time is always a premium for us, right? Time is always a risk. But is it possible sometimes just to go, do you know what? Let's shortcut this. Let's just skip to the end, share what we think the conclusion is, and just go with that. Do you lose anything by that? Anthony, you do a lot of this sort of facilitating work, don't you?
I do, and
what do you reckon?
I'm
am
actually...
I putting you out of a job? Shit. No.
Well, no, absolutely not. And actually, I'm going to remind you of something you told me about a year ago when we were collaborating with an organisation, and you and I were having quite a heated debate about the process in which we were going to go through in order to facilitate the day. And then you actually stopped and you said, do you know what, Anthony, this all is irrelevant to a degree because it's about the outcome. How we actually get there is less important than actually the outcome itself. And that's always really stayed with me because I get really, really caught up in process. And without a process, you can get to an outcome, but it's just easier if you've got a winning formula, a winning process to get there. And certainly with a lot of the facilitation that I do, it's a tried and trusted process. We know it works. And I say to people regularly, trust the process because it guides you to the end goal. But you can never, ever forget what the end goal is. And that is the most important piece. And for me, I think it's the most important question you have to ask is, why are we doing this? And where are we going? We're on a journey. What do we want to be at the end of it? And then that guides everything else. So I think,
super interesting.
Yeah, we can get caught up in it, but always to remind people of that is essential. And to be honest, I've actually got someone that I'm talking to again tomorrow. I've been working with each other for about 3 or 4 months, and we're going to kick off with the team at the beginning of March. And I'm going to ask them again on Friday, what's the outcome? And I ask them every time we talk. And they're probably getting a little bit sick of me asking this, but it's been 3 weeks since we last spoke, and things will have changed, right? So it's just always concentrating on with the end in mind.
Very good, very good. Mr. Moore, any thoughts?
Yeah.
Can you skip to the end? Is it right? When is it wrong to do it?
Yeah, I mean, when we were doing our editorial prior to this, you called it the power of skipping to the end. I love that. sort of got this big old tape recorder in my head, where you press the button and you hit the forward button. To me, the collaborative thinking, I do believe in the power of teams. And I think, a few people in the room together or connected via Zoom or whatever can come up, the output of them working together, if it's all carefully moderated, is far more powerful than one person. And to me, the key is the moderating stuff. And I think, yes, I've been in painful meetings where there's too much analysis and sometimes it just comes together and bang, all these conclusions come. And I love, one of my favorite Gandhi quotes is about religion. It says they're all different paths up the same mountain to the same destination. This groupthink, teams working together, all maybe come up a different path up the mountain, but they come to the same result. And then everyone feels like they've provided input, the actions are agreed upon, the destinations agreed upon, and everyone can work together as having fed into it, but without overanalyzing it. It becomes like a really nice meeting, an energizing meeting, rather than one you just had and gone, oh my God, I want to poke my eyes out with a stick. So that's what I wanted to add. The way it is all curated and moderated. So, to just keep that balance of going and letting people be heard and then focusing on the end result.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you both. I think it's a really interesting thing to explore. How do we facilitate that thinking in groups? And there's different ways of doing it. I think, Anthony, you have read something this week, which I thought I found ever so interesting.
Well, there's a little bit of a cheat in this one this week, I've got to admit it. But where it started from was the thought process about where do the best ideas come from? Where do the best thoughts or the great ideas come from? And I was actually on social media and a video popped up, and there's a gentleman called Ronan Kelly who cycles around Ireland and starts speaking to really interesting folk about their experience and their lives. And one of them was a gentleman in the southwest of Ireland who sits in a coffee shop all day and he brings in creatives and people, authors, artists, and just chews the fat, speaks about life. And he started talking about a book by Bertrand Russell, In Praise of Idleness. It's actually nearly 100 years old, right? Well, it's certainly almost 90 years old. And it really got me thinking about this idea about idleness and how the world we live in now doesn't really, we don't really talk about the benefits of sitting back and relaxing and doing nothing. And actually, in 1932, we have a situation where even then it was like, okay, we've got to see the benefits of doing nothing and sitting back and being idle, because that's when the brain kicks in. That's when the ideas come to us. And I suppose if I was to give a modern day example, when I speak to people, it's, I was in the shower and I thought of this. And quite often I say to people, well, where did that idea come up from? And it's like, oh, when I was in the shower. Because funny enough, what happens in the shower, you can't take your phone in the shower, right? You can't take anything in the shower with you. So it's your mind. And it's your mind that does the thinking. And it really, really was thought-provoking from a perspective of, okay, is it okay to just sit down and just stare and do nothing? And how acceptable is that in the modern day world? However, we know that when we do that, we can come up with the best ideas, right? When we just stop and let our brain relax. So that's where it came from. And I just thought, actually, I've heard of the author. I didn't know about the book. And then I looked it up and I then realized the book was written in 1932. I thought, wow, okay. So even back then.
Very good.
Love it.
Obviously, I love this one. I mean, I think you guys know I'm a bit of a nut for the concept of idleness, which, and I must admit, I know
that's interesting coming from one of the busiest people I know.
But yeah, you say this, but it's interesting because Bertrand Russell. I mean, I'm a huge fan. Actually, I had not heard that quote from him or knew he wrote that particular book. But I think a lot of people, when you say idle, think lazy, and of course nothing could be further from the truth. And when I think about being idle, it's like, it's a Ferrari stopped at the traffic lights. It's that kind of idling. It's not that we're doing nothing. It's not that we're stationary or stopped. It's that we're building up the next head of steam. And it's how you recharge in that time. I've at various points subscribed to the Idler magazine, which is a society of idle people. And they do these wonderful retreats where you just go and you do completely random but enchanting things, like have an amazing lecture, or learn how to arrange flowers, or just completely random acts of idleness that just, I feel, is what recharges the brain. And I think you can go so far as to say that all creativity in many ways sort of depends on idleness to a certain extent, because I think Anthony's right. I can't think of an idea I had, a creative idea I had that wasn't at some level, didn't come up during that idle phase. Maybe that said, I think you can have great thinking in the moment intuitively, but frequently I think it's so important that you do allow yourself that time. I'm thoughtful about a story you were sharing with me, Alex, around your house and the sprint to do all that work, and what you need next. I don't know. What do you reckon? Does it connect?
Yeah, no, I loved this too. I mean, I think it's a Wordsworth poem. What is this life if so full of care? We have no time to stand and stare. It's I think it's a brilliant. I think he wrote it walking around, having an idle moment in the Lake District, I think. And when we did our editorial, this jumped out at me as brilliant. Yeah, so for me, some of the toughest decisions I may make in my life seems to be done on a subconscious level. And the calmer I am, and the sort of more relaxed I am about those decisions at certain crossroads in my life, the better decisions I make. And that, a lot of that is when running a business. There's some very difficult, talked about this last week. So, when there are a bunch of very difficult options in front of you, what's the point to sit there in front of your computer screen thinking, which one? Or just go for a walk and look at some clouds and not think about it. And maybe the right answer is, it will pop into your head that's made at a subconscious level. So yeah, for me, I'd love to read this book. And I like this guy. I can't believe it's written in 1932, probably. This is one of these, brilliant thinkers that was years and years ahead of his time. So thanks for sharing.
That's a good one. I think it's a good one. And I'm reminded of when you mentioned there, Alex, about, going for a walk, and to Ben's point, that's not the engine off, that's the engine going, but you're going for a walk, and there's travel often, getting lost will help you find yourself. And it's certainly one thing that I do now, is that when I go for my walk, which isn't as often as it should be in today's sort of situation, but I'll quite often, and it drives the kids crazy, where I'll go, let's just go down here, and it's all local streets, but you end up going off the beaten track and going down a road you don't know, and then you see something, and it just provokes a thought. It provokes, it provokes a thought and provokes an idea of something that you've been, generally for me, concerned about or worried about, anxious about, and it can really help bring some clarity.
Unlocks a door, maybe.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, I look forward to hearing from you both when you've completed reading the book. We're going to move on to our learned, and Alex, it's back over to you.
Yeah, so this one's really came from a conversation we had, the three of us, during the editorial time, and it's about, again, with the theme of thinking, what, as a founder of a business, maintaining a quality of thought during difficult times. So, this was inspired by a podcast, and during the podcast it was talking about IQ, EQ, and something I'd never heard of before, AQ, adversity quotient, which is how much you can put up with. And I think, again, as a founder, you have to put up with a lot to stay sane. And the old line about, if you can keep your head around you while lots of poetry today, while all around you are losing theirs, by Rudyard Kipling. I think that's a really good thing, to be the calm person in the room, to bring, during extreme stress, to remain calm, to keep focused, just keep the quality of thinking at a high level. And that can be very, very calming for the team. And, when there's a lot of pressure on your individual shoulders, it can be very useful to just be that calm person, maintain that AQ, that adversity quotient, and just let things happen. Stay true to your beliefs and get through it together. What do you guys think about that? Who wants to go first? Ben.
I was really curious by this idea of an AQ, an adversity quotient. I'm sort of super curious how they define and measure it. Intuitively, I kind of prefer it, because often we talk about resilience, right? We talk about increasing resilience and being resilient and and I often think it's just one of those things that's become a metaphor for just work harder, preferably for less money. It's not a very nice. You be resilient. I'm not being horrible to you. You're just not resilient enough. So it's kind of, I've always had a bit of a problem and a struggle with this sort of resilience thing. But I like the idea of an adversity quotient in terms of your capacity to generate quality thinking in the face of adversity, to maintain that calm mind. I'm sort of wondering how it's developed and how we can build it. I suspect it's probably, in the space of mindfulness and being able to have that full control of your state, to choose to be calm in a given situation rather than feel you're forced to be angry and emotional in response. And I quite like the interplay of the idea of, it's almost a little process there is, in the course of that thinking. Yes, of course, we should use our intellect and we should think using our intellectual brain. We should also use our EQ and think about the people involved and the care that we have for them, and how it's going to impact them. But equally, I think AQ is very useful, because you go, well, actually, am I making this decision as a result of being in a position of adversity? Am I snatching at it? Am I making a bad decision out of that pressure? I remember, I think we've said it on Founder Hacks before, but that line that I harvested from Facebook: never make a decision if you're hungry, angry, or lonely. And maybe that's what AQ is to spot, the time where you are hungry, angry, or lonely, subject to adversity, and maybe now's not the time to make a decision, because it's going to be prompted by the wrong type of brain at that point. But I'm super interested to listen to the podcast. I mean, there's a lot to say without having actually heard it, so I don't know, they may mean something completely different. I hope they mean that, though, because that would be cool. Anthony, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I've been fortunate enough to listen to the podcast, and it talks about what you can do to improve, what you can do to improve your score. And it's funny enough about who you surround yourself with. And so it talks about your tribe, something that one of our listeners, James Birchall, talks a lot about is your tribe. And, in order to improve your AQ, build a team around you whose strengths are your weaknesses, right? Now, when you're a startup, when you're first starting out, it's very difficult to build a team around you. But I would always say, and certainly from our experience, check in with other entrepreneurs. They're more than happy to share their experiences, and have them as a bit of a buddy, So if you've got a particular weakness, see if they've got that as a strength, and check in with them, for an hour every week or an hour every fortnight, and just bounce things off, or build a team around you with that. And one of the other things it spoke about was just be really, really good at your strengths. Really drill down onto your strengths and be really good at that. And because the quote came up is, no one pays for average. Be excellent at what you do. And I think what it's alluding to there is, as you go through that sort of process, is that, there is less adversity when you're doing what you're really, really good at, and what you can actually be at the top of your game in. So I think it's a fascinating kind of addition to the IQ EQ, and I think it's one that's underplayed. Certainly, as people go into setting up their own business, how high does your AQ have to be? And I think it's
would you say it's a vital sort of thing to be good at, Anthony, to be a good entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think it's essential. I think,
Yeah.
and this might be controversial, but I would say it's more essential than IQ,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because actually, without that adversity, if you hit that, and we all know of how many obstacles and how many roadblocks you can come up against when you're running a business. And if you're not able to deal with that, then you're done. You can have all the intelligence, all the intellect in the world. Am I being controversial there, Ben?
Oh, not at all. I mean, I genuinely think, if we think about it, just logically, the only sure thing I think I could say to somebody who was considering starting a business, the only thing I would be absolutely certain they will confront is adversity. Success, maybe. Who knows? But I'll tell you what, you will definitely, you will definitely confront some adversity. So I totally think so. I think it's interesting. Build it through the people that you choose to surround yourself with. I think is useful. Very, very cool. Very cool. Well, on that note, gentlemen, I believe we are at time. So as I seem to have developed a habit of doing, I will try and summarise.
It's because you're the best at it. It's because you're the best at it, Ben.
Thank you. You're too kind. You watch. I'll make an absolute mess of this one.
That's it.
But, okay, I will try. So first of all, can we skip to the end? There are times when a process is really important to gather opinions from everybody and work out a consensus view, but sometimes we can skip it and just solicit everyone's conclusions at the outset. We may be pleasantly surprised. When we think about where great thinking comes from, can we look to the poets and philosophers no less than Bertrand Russell and Wordsworth? Is it when we are idle that creativity happens? Is the real fruit of great thinking the calm mind? And finally, we know that we need to check in with our IQ and our EQ as we do our thinking. But can you build your tribe and build your AQ to make sure that when you're confronting adversity, as you inevitably will when you grow your business, as you do, you can maintain that quality of thought and continue to make great decisions? I think it only remains to say a massive thank you to Mr. Alex Moore.
Thanks, guys, and thanks for listening.
And an equally magnificent thank you to Anthony Enright.
Thank you, gents. Been a real pleasure this week.
Please remember, of course, as always, that Founder Hacks is not just a podcast, it is also a blog. If you would like your Founder Hacks in written forms, you can sign up at atomics.co.uk. We also love it when people share their thoughts, their learnings, their insights with us. So please do drop us a line at hello@atomics.co.uk if you have a Founder Hack you'd like to share with our listeners, or equally, if a Founder Hack we've shared has given you an inspiration that has helped your business get to the next level of growth. I've been Ben Thomas. This has been Founder Hacks, and thank you very much indeed for listening.